but just getting things set up right now so that hopefully we can have people hop on in. And let me call up, let's call up the live chat here. So if you do sign on, just let me know. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions. We're going to be doing this. I typically do this on Sundays for about 30 to 45 minutes. And this is kind of a way to just interact with everybody that watches my channel. I never, ever want to say fans because I think that is arrogant and egotistical, and everybody who watches my channel, I try to make my channel like something that I would want to see. And I view everybody who watches as peers, as subscribers, as people who are just on the journey with me. So I really just view live chats as hanging out with friends, discussing, exchanging ideas, answering some questions, learning more about you, learning more about what you want, learning about what you want to see. So if you do sign on, please let me know who you are, where you're from, if you have any questions. And again, I do this for about 30 to 45 minutes every Sunday. And I've been doing this because also I've been getting a lot more comments, which I love. I love the engagement and a lot more things that involve discussion. And sometimes it's hard to discuss just in the comments. And because I get so many people now that I'm trying to streamline all the process and just get everyone here together. Hey, so we got Greg from, that's Ohio, is that correct? Greg, where in Ohio are you from, out of curiosity? We got Mr. Mojo Murphy. And again, if you guys check him out, Mojo is a friend of mine. He's a bassist friend of mine that I met this year. We were playing with Cara Granger. And he's also doing a lot of really cool YouTube stuff. I really strongly encourage everyone to check out Mojo because Joe and I are pals, we're buddies, we're friends, and we live, he lives in St. Louis, I live in Nashville, and he works a day job. And he's a really, really smart guy and does a lot of different things, but he also really loves music, and he does things like running sound, doing video. He's doing the whole thing, and he has this Weekend Warrior series that I strongly encourage everyone to look at because it's kind of almost like a Y in the road. And I'm not saying one road is better or worse, but I put all my eggs into the music basket. Mojo does his things where he's like, I got a family I got to take care of, and he's just an insanely smart. He is much smarter than me. That's not saying much, but Joe is a really smart, intelligent guy, and so he does a lot of work in some technical fields as well. He's just done it all, but he's really curious and likes to learn, and so he's been doing the YouTube thing and making videos from his point of view. So if you ever want to see like what somebody with who's working a job, supporting a family, and also playing music, you should check out his channel. So we got Greg from Cincinnati. You emailed me about tuning drums. I'm not sure if I got that, but we can answer that really quickly. And then we got Dale from Minnesota. Hey Dale, where in Minnesota are you from? And thank you for the, saying you love the down-to-earth approach. Really, again, what I try to do here is I think about what's a younger version of me, what would I have needed? What's like the real talk? Like I read Modern Drum, I read all the musician rags when I was growing up, and I was like thinking about like trying to be like this top level pro drummer right from the start. And I will get there, but I also didn't realize all these things you need to do along the way. So I really like to explain that and say it's really achievable, but it's also you have to be really intentional with that work. Alexandria, Minnesota. Is that close to Minneapolis by chance? And also, Greg, while you're at it, Greg asked me about tuning drums. Greg, why don't you tell me, Greg from Cincinnati, I went to college in Columbus. I went to Capitol Conservatory of Music, and so I played a lot of gigs in Cincinnati. Played there actually earlier this year with Cara Granger. I've done a lot of work with another artist named Derek Allen and John Morgan there. It's a good city. So in Dale, you're 2 hours from Minneapolis. I'm going to touch on that really quickly. And a lot of people think that you need to be in like these big cities to make it happen musically. And if you are full-time as a musician or if you are a weekend warrior, you don't need to be in a big city. Like, for example, I know a buddy of mine who lives in this sweet spot. He's about 3-4 hours away from Milwaukee, 3-4 hours away from Chicago, 3-4 hours away from Minnesota. He like gave himself like a 3-hour radius for a lot of big markets, and he says, I can always do gigs there, but I also really can nail down my market where I'm at, which is a little bit of a smaller place. And I think there is some value in that, and that's an interesting way to approach it. That's not how I would want to do it, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but like he found his thing. He's like, this is the lane I want to be in, I'm going to do it. And it's a really good example. It doesn't matter where you are, you can always make music somehow. So I want to ask, so really quickly, Axel is asking, or Greg was asking a question about tuning drums. And not everyone may be a drummer here, but I want to put this in the frame where everyone can relate to it, even if you're a drummer or not. Hey, Joel from Tucson. I saw you on Friday, or you saw me on Friday. Thanks for joining again, Joel. So with tuning drums, and tuning drums is going to be like any piece of advice that I would give people. And this is some advice that I really didn't understand until I was much older, and it would save me a lot of time and hassle. And I would like to say that the easiest, quickest way to your solution is taking the long road, taking the hard road. There are no shortcuts. There are no simple answers, simple solutions, even with something like tuning a drum. Now, when you're talking to me about tuning a drum, Greg, you could have the same kind of drum set, the same sizes, same heads, and you would need to take a different approach because you might be in a different room, you might be playing a different style of music, you might touch the drums differently, the drums may react to you differently, the shell might have some different, some different discrepancies, but it's really about there is no one solution for any problem. It's really like, okay, we need to think about this and what are we trying to do? And with the tuning of the drums, the whole point I was trying to make was that a lot of times we take these these things and make them very complex. And they don't have to be complex. So my tuning approach with a certain drum set that I have with certain heads and a certain style is that I finger tighten the lugs on all the heads, and then I'll do maybe like half a turn, maybe a full turn on each lug, just so that it's just like a little bit above finger tension, and that's a good starting point for me. And also knowing that I'm using this for when the drums are mic'd up. So engineers love that. And I don't like the way the drums sound when I play them that way in certain rooms. However, when I'm playing in a big room and like I want a lot of attack and thump, doing that is really helpful. And I've learned to think, all right, I'm playing, not just playing the drums in like a space, they are amplified, and I think, okay, if I can get this like dead, just thumpy sound, then that can give the engineer a lot to work with. So the bottom head. So Greg, bottom head is like, I more or less do the same thing. I more or less get the same tension, and I make sure it's in tune with each other. And then sometimes I'll do minor tweaks up and down depending on that. And it's really like, I would say don't follow a template. Don't follow a formula per se, but just like get it in the ballpark. And then from there, all right, what do you need to do? Are you mic'd up? What style of music are you playing? Do you need the drum to sing a little bit more, sing a little bit less? Explore, okay? Don't look for just, this is the way to do it. And let's talk, so I want to answer Mojo's question. You mentioned in the beginning of your year video, you want to write some songs. It's still very early in the year, but have you made any headway on writing? Ooh, Joe, man, that is something that's been in the back of my mind. And I've started writing slowly, but I haven't written enough. And I don't want to make excuses. It's something that I've been trying to do. And yeah, I've been dealing with life issues like everybody is. And life issues is the perfect time to write. But yeah, I've been learning new ways of operating. Like doing things like, oh, there may not be enough hours in the day and I might need to start spending my time more efficiently. And sometimes I'm really uncomfortable emotionally, mentally, and I do things to distract myself instead of leaning into the hard things, like writing songs where I don't get that instant gratification. Sometimes just scrolling on Instagram gives me that instant gratification. But yeah, that is something I'm working on. And Joe, I really appreciate you asking that sincerely because I want to start working on those songs. I've written here or there, but I need to be doing a lot more time practicing. But there's also the issue of, you know what, I don't have a functioning interface right now. My computer is on the fritz. I've done all my videos on my phone. I need to get money for a computer. I need to get money for new camera equipment. I need to get money for an audio interface. It's like there are so many different things that I'm focusing on all these obstacles, but you know what? I can start writing. That's not getting in the way. And yeah, sometimes like a great saying is like you can have excuses or you can have results, not both. And the old me has lived by that, and sometimes I like go to the extremes and it's all or nothing. But one of the things I'm learning this year is how to bend, but not totally break. So in the past, I would totally be all or nothing, and it would start this crazy cycle where I would get myself all hyped up. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to take the world on fire, take the world by fire. I'm going to do all these crazy, great things. And then like I would maybe start down that path, and then if I like took one misstep or I failed at one small task, I would give up and feel defeated. And then I would feel the shame, and then I would go within, and then I would just kind of shame spiral and maybe do things like distract myself. Like some people use alcohol, some people use like dopamine, like with sugar, with internet. I would just do things to like distract myself from the discomfort and pain I was feeling because I wasn't achieving my goals. And then after a while, I would snap myself out of it, and I'd be like, all right, you got to get better, man. And like, I would hype myself up and get this arrogant status where I'm like, I'm going to take over the world. And then I start taking over the world, and then slowly but surely, it goes back again. And a lot of that really just stems from me feeling inadequate and insecure in myself as a person, in my musical skills. And I'm saying that not as a woe is me and not to be like overly emotive, but to say, you know, a lot of people struggle with this. And one of the things I've worked on this year is saying, this stuff doesn't happen overnight. Writing songs doesn't happen overnight. Starting a YouTube channel doesn't happen overnight. Resuming your career doesn't happen overnight. It's really delayed gratification. So I've been really like doing some work with that. And Julia, hello. Julia in Cincinnati, hello. This is Aaron from Nashville, chatting with your dad, Greg, here. And I wanted to talk with Dale. He's a weekend warrior, but having having tendonitis, issues with the right forearm. I know you have a health background. I'm wondering if you have any good general recommendations for this condition. So Dale, that is a freaking great question. And if you can recall what I said to Greg about tuning drums, okay? There is no easy answer. There is no easy solution. There's not going to be like, just do this. It is all relative, right? Now, it's like you could be like a certain age, certain weight, certain size, and you could have somebody who has the same, like take a clone of you, some like same size, same weight, same age, and they could have the same kind of symptoms and be having it come from a totally different issue. And it's very much like the site of your pain is very rarely the source of it. So when I was working with people with injuries, a lot of times like people who had a forearm injury, a lot of times I would look upstream, downstream. So upstream meaning, all right, let's look up towards the elbow, towards the shoulder, let's look towards the wrist, towards the fingers. And yeah, so we would start there, but also just looking at everything as a whole. And if I could like put this in terms of like musical analogies. So if you're tuning a drum set sometimes and like you're like really just trying to, sometimes you're trying to tune a drum and it just doesn't sing right, or it's just making the whole kit vibrate. You might have to not tune that drum. You might have to tune some other drum to really get that whole kit in tune with itself. And so this is me just saying, man, like with these injuries, there is no really one easy answer. But with all my clients, I basically started out as talking about load versus capacity, in the sense that, let's put it in terms of running. If you're used to running and you gradually build up and train over months, you can do a marathon and not get injured. But if you go out and run a marathon today having no background and no training, of course you're going to get injured. Why? Because you just overloaded your system. And so the same thing can happen with our body, specifically when we're having like forearm tendonitis. It might be like, oh, I put too much load on this area for a variety of reasons. Maybe I'm playing too much, maybe I'm playing with improper form, maybe I'm not sleeping enough, maybe my diet sucks, but it's usually a combination of all of those things. And there's not one cause and there's not one solution. But really, I would say we want to take a step back and load versus capacity. I tell people it's like if you're going out drinking and you drink 30 beers in one night and then you have one shot of tequila at the end of the night, the next morning you wake up hungover and you say, ugh, boy, that shot of tequila really gave me a hangover. It wasn't the shot of tequila. It was just everything you did before that. Tequila was just the cherry on top. But really, you would want to look at all these things historically and start with, like getting an overall assessment. And Dale, if you want to talk about that, man, dude, shoot me a message. I would be happy to chat with you about that. So yeah, and Jeff Hyatt. So says Nancy Griffith Singer. So do you? Okay. All right, Nancy Griffith Singer. Cool. Rock and roll. So curious if we have any other questions. I put the whole thing about Beyoncé and country music because a lot of people here in Nashville are talking about that. But yeah, I guess people here don't care as much about it, which fine by me. I just thought it was interesting and I just wanted to discuss it with people. I don't have any specific point of view, but I was kind of more curious about listening to what everyone had to say because a lot of people seem to have very strong opinions about this. And I've learned to say, okay, just listen and say, cool. Because, I have, my opinion's not going to change anything about that scenario. And, I'm not sure what me saying, if I like something, don't like something, doesn't really have an impact. Beyonce's in a different world than me. I mean, she's a megastar. She's a superstar. She's unbelievably talented. And she seems to be polarizing for a lot of people. And I've really held back on like commenting too much. And Joe says I haven't heard one of her songs, but I like cross genre stuff typically. And today is not country music to me. And a lot of people have differing takes on this. Yeah, I don't know. I really I just know Beyonce is insanely talented. And I'm also new to country music. I don't really have a dog in the fight with country music. I'm just a musician. I didn't grow up listening to country. I didn't move to Nashville to play country, but it's a style that is played here. And I'm kind of almost like a guest in country's home. And that's why I'm also listening, getting people's perspectives. But I'm also a musician and I'm also a human being. And I like to hear what other people say. So Ingold Guitar says, who's your most inspiring local drummer studio live there in Nashville? It's a good question. So there's a couple people. Jerry Pentecost, you should check him out. He was playing with Old Crow Medicine Show. Now he's playing with a very well-known singer-songwriter. I'm sure everyone here has heard of this singer-songwriter. But yeah, Jerry Pentecost. And I actually worked with Jerry for about a year in a non-musical aspect. And I didn't even see him play for a year. But what he taught me so much about the networking game, the socializing, the hang. And I used to think the hang was just being cool, right? And no, it's not just being cool. It's can you sit in the van for 20 hours with people and not piss people off? Can other people do things that piss you off and you not show it? Are you comfortable with saying your boundaries and picking your battles? And Jerry taught me so much about that. So much about that. And that's something I didn't learn until much older, and I learned from Jerry. And so Jerry and I are talking, and tomorrow, he's about to go on tour, but tomorrow we might sit down to film a 5 minutes with segment that I've been doing that people really respond to. We actually might do it at an auto repair shop. Not ideal, but like that's the only time I have, and he's a great influence. So Jerry, like personally, he's a great dude, and he's also a killer musician. I didn't hear him play for the first year that I met him. Then I saw him play, and he played exactly the way I thought he was going to play, which was he's like one of my best friends, one of the best people I know in Nashville. But also, you should check out Keo Stroud. He plays Monday gigs at the local. So a lot of musicians go to it. It's, again, Keo Stroud. He plays regular Monday gigs at the local. He also used to play with Big and Rich, I think Randy Rogers. Keo's played with everybody. I remember actually one time, and Mojo was there with me. I think we were on tour. We were playing somewhere in Delaware, and we were listening to a Keb Mo album, and I was like, wow, I really like the drums on this. Who is this? And they were like, oh, it's Keo, my buddy. So I would definitely check out Keo Stroud. Oh, thank you, Iron Man. Great to see you as well. And Axel, no, I have not played drums for Kid Rock. No, I have not. So Alex says, let's see. Hot take on country music. I feel like the world is tired of autotune, and country folk seems to be the last standing genre with true human elements throughout that you can imagine. Okay. I mean, that's a take. I don't necessarily agree or disagree with that. I'm just like, okay, that's a take. I think about, like, what about jazz? Jazz, it's a little bit, it's different, right? But I don't think jazz is necessarily using autotune. And autotune isn't necessarily good or bad, right? Autotune is just like, it's a tool. Just kind of like distortion. It's not good or bad, it's a tool. It's all relative to the situation. And I mean, country music, I oftentimes feel like music is very similar to food. Everybody has different tastes, and those foods often connect people to a different time in their life, a different place. It's a sense that makes you think of when you were growing up, perhaps. Same with music. So that's why, like, everyone's hometown pizza, they love their hometown pizza, or most people do, because they're like, oh, this takes me back. I have an emotional attachment. That's what culture is. It's a way of kind of capturing a time and an essence for you. So and I didn't grow up listening to country. I appreciate it, but like I didn't grow up listening to country. And then we have Katie Shart, who says, arguably the most important part of being in a band, the hang, talent being a prerequisite, of course. And Katie, I absolutely 100% agree. If you guys don't know Katie, Katie's a great, she's a talented singer. She's a songwriter. She is a mogul. If you are a music business person, you're going to want to know Katie. She has her irons in a million different fires. Dale, you'd want to check her out. Katie is in Minnesota. She has a band. Is it Little Fox and Chickenfoot? That is. She just released a new album this week. But Katie's a friend of mine. I met her doing a Rare Hair show in Nashville. She's definitely somebody you want to check out and hook up with. Katie and I often collaborate, talk about ideas. And again, definitely somebody. She is not just a great musician, but also a great contact, a great person who gets the whole picture. And she's living in Minnesota, working full-time, playing music and doing nothing else, and she isn't homeless. She has a house and a car, from what I believe. So that's saying a lot when you're in Minnesota. Okay, and Alex says he ran out of country and saying country has been winning, so everyone else is just handling like business and changing their brands. I mean, yeah. I mean, like, again, I don't have a dog in this fight. And I don't necessarily think, like, is music winning or losing? I really think about music as an expression of who you are. Music is kind of like, this is my story. I want to tell you my story. Or it's like a journal, right? And do you think, like, for me, when I journal every day or when I meditate, I'm not thinking about winning or losing. I'm thinking about just tapping into who I am, being present with who I am. And I think music is very much like that. Sometimes you want to express something. And then sometimes you try different vehicles, and there's nothing wrong with it. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with playing music in a certain style. It's like, I want to play music, and this is who I am. There's nothing wrong with exploring styles as well. And I also think that music and life and culture doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? It's clearly, so here's a really good story. If you guys know the tune Shania Twain's Any Man of Mine, I would encourage all of you to listen to it. Just listen to the lyrics, okay? And so if somebody wants to call up those lyrics and actually paste them into the chat, I would love for that. And I'm going to make like a really serious, strong point about that. But about Any Man of Mine and how it relates to country music, and nothing happens in isolation. Nothing happens in a vacuum. Life is all relative. So I was playing a gig one time, and somebody requested Any Man of Mine by Shania Twain. And it was a male singer. Okay? So the male singer wasn't comfortable singing Any Man of Mine, because from what I gathered, he was interested in women and he was heterosexual. But he's like, okay, I'm going to sing it as Any Woman of Mine. Okay? And I was like, okay, cool, whatever. I'm not singing, I'm not in the mic. So he starts singing Any Woman of Mine, and he's changing nothing about the lyrics to Any Man of Mine, except making it Any Woman of Mine. And again, I don't have the lyrics in front of me, but what he was saying was like, any woman of mine better be proud of me, even when I'm feeling ugly, and then something like, better have my dinner ready on the table. Any woman of mine better walk the line. Like, it sounds like, again, so nothing changed except just the perspective of it. So if you flip the perspective of it, and then you're like, oh, well, if a man's singing this to a woman, we're supposed to all be equal, right? But when a man's singing it to a woman and singing Any Woman of Mine, it seems, okay, based on power dynamics of society, it's like, yeah, maybe you shouldn't be like telling your woman to walk the line and get in line, because, yeah. So that's a whole long-winded point about, I think it's all relative, right? Like, you can take something and kind of try something on, but it's also like, you just got to be aware of your surroundings and the situation. And my whole thing is like, I want to play music. I want everyone to be happy. I want everyone to be supported. And I want everyone to feel safe. And my job really, both as a musician and a person, is to listen. Like, I'm a drummer. My job is to listen. I'm essentially a producer of a moment. I have to listen to what's going on and help guide everybody through that. I have to facilitate that. If I'm overplaying, if I'm not really facilitating a conversation, but I am the conversation, nobody wants to hear that shit, right? Like, drum solos are cool, but nobody wants to hear them for like all day long. And I also think just me as a person, as a hang, as a band member, as a team member, my job is to listen, okay? And now I might need to like guide a conversation towards another place or like turn the ship around at points. But really my job is first and foremost is to listen when I'm in the van, when I'm with people, when I'm on stage. And I've really tried to lean into that, both as a musician and a person. And it's hard to do sometimes. So I would really encourage all of you to like take some time and listen. And it's hard. Like, sometimes when somebody like takes a song in a totally different direction and you're used to it going down a certain path, sometimes you might need to step in, but sometimes you got to be like, okay, maybe I want to listen to what this person has to say. And then it's also just like being on a stage with people, you build trust. And you don't build trust by domineering things. You build trust by listening to people. So when people bring up the Beyoncé or the country thing, I say, okay, what do you have to say? Let me listen to it. And then I also think, all right, cool. Do I want to invest my time and energy into having this conversation? So think about it in terms of music. If I'm playing in a bar band and someone plays like, a major 7 instead of a dominant 7, am I going to like really nitpick that? Or I'm like, listen, it's just a bar gig, it's just one off. But if I'm preparing for the Grammys and it's very important to me, of course I'm going to be really invested into what's going on, and like we need to like really nail everything down. But again, picking your battles, picking your energy, where you spend. So yeah, so I wanted I could talk more about that, and maybe I will later. But yeah, Katie, Katie's just Katie likes to talk. She has the Midwest chit chat. So if you guys, if you're not getting texted enough or messaged enough, make friends with Katie, and I'm sure that that will change very quickly. So Joel says, saw your interview with John Root. It's interesting to hear the advice about lighter cymbals. Yeah, Joel, I totally agree. I thought that it was, oh, you want to carry lighter cymbals because, oh, you're having to lug stuff. I didn't think about the other people on stage. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And interestingly enough, I actually cut out me saying that, because one thing I've learned about start doing interviews is that like I want to interject and talk, and really interviewing people is about letting the other person talk, letting them tell their story, and you not really putting your stamp on it. Maybe framing it in a certain way. So we got a few more minutes here. I was curious if anybody had any more questions. Axel or Greg says, who's your favorite drummer? Probably Ringo Starr. Ringo Starr is like, everyone knows Ringo Starr. He was part of like the band that influenced the world. He's not the greatest drummer by any means, in terms of technically speaking, but people don't go to hear drums as a technical, athletic instrument. Some people do that, and that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But he played in such a way that he was making music with a group of people that changed the world. Yeah. And ounces are pounds. Okay, yeah, ounces do make pounds. Hey, it wasn't the best drummer in the Beatles. Yeah, I know. Yeah. I've heard that because what was it on? Back in the USR, who's it like? Paul McCartney played on that. Yeah. So one thing I really like about Ringo's playing is that when he was playing, you could tell that it was Ringo. It was unique, and that's a great thing about music. Music is not a competition. You're not trying to be the best. You're trying to be the most honest and authentic version of yourself, which is hard to do. So 95 at noon says, what kind of thoughts what kinds of thoughts go through your mind when you're playing a gig versus practicing? Any difference? That's a good question. I once heard a really great quote when I was coming up and going through music school, was that professional musicians play better on gigs. Amateur musicians play better in rehearsals, meaning that professional musicians rise to the occasion on gigs. I see that's a military phrase about prioritizing your gear down to the ounce. Yeah, I got you on that. That's what I was thinking. Okay. But practice versus performance. So when I am practicing, a lot of times, like, I have to really get into this place where, like, what are my intentions? What are my goals with that practice session? What are my overarching goals? And I'll do things like I'll turn off my phone. Turn off your phone. Please just turn off your phone when you're practicing. Because anytime a ding goes off, anytime something, it like takes you 17 minutes to get back into that flow state. So yeah, when I'm practicing, it's almost like meditation. And a lot of times I'm just being very intentional with my work when I'm practicing. Now, when I'm playing, it's also, what am I practicing? Am I learning material, or am I practicing technique? That's all a broader question. But one thing I do when I'm playing is I try and be as present as possible, which is hard to do. And when I was younger, I had this problem where I was always analyzing myself in my head and saying, oh, here comes this part, you better nail it, better get it right, don't mess it up. And then here it comes, and then boom, I would mess it up, and I'd be like talking to myself poorly the whole time, like judging myself, like, oh, you screwed it up. you need to start doing this, you need to start making changes. And that voice inside my head did me no good. So when I'm playing now, like I read this book called The Inner Game of Music, and one of the tips was be present. See what other people are doing. Watch other people's hands. Watch your hands. Don't make any judgments, don't make any thoughts, just let things flow through you. And for me, sometimes that really helps if I just like turn off my brain and just go there and just listen to the music, watch someone else's hands, and just don't judge, but sometimes I'll react. Sometimes I'll even think about like, what's the meaning of the song? What are they trying to say? Or like think of, literally, I'll create a movie in my head about the song and the story behind it. But anything to keep me present and not talk to myself here. Yeah, and then Joel says, I have to focus intensely on performing or my mind wanders. Yeah, there's a lot of things. Focusing intensely it's tough work, and it's a muscle. And when I'm doing a 4-hour gig or I'm doing multiple 4-hour gigs in a day, sometimes that muscle can get really fatigued. And also sometimes it's very much like running, like where I'm used to a mental pace. Whereas if I'm like playing a high profile gig in front of, a couple thousand people, maybe I'm playing just a song or two, it's like intense, insane focus, and that's like sprinting. Yeah. Yeah. So wanted to know if anybody has any more questions. We got a couple more minutes left here. Would love to hear if anybody has any more questions here, because this is really just me hanging out with friends, talking shop, seeing what I can do. Yeah, and you know what? Maybe I'll make a video about the inner game of music. Yeah, maybe I should make a game about a video about the inner game of music. So we got time for maybe about one or two more. Feel free to put it in here, or if there's any observations or any stories you want to share. But yeah, I really enjoy these chats. How do you deal? So Joel asks, how do you deal when there are a number of things that you didn't expect that happened on a gig? So Joel, are you talking about in the moment or afterwards? I'm curious, so enlighten me about that. But also, the book's on Spotify. All right, cool. So Joel's asking about what do you do when there's variables that are introduced to you on a gig, and everyone treats that very differently. There's a whole saying, lowest common denominator, meaning that you're only as good as you are on your worst day in the worst circumstances. So what's the thing that you can do if everything's working against you? Okay, so Joel's saying, I was playing a nursing home on Friday, and they set me up in a different place, and they had people sitting really close to me and my friend, and yeah. So Joel is talking about playing a gig where he shows up at the gig, and it's like totally different than what he would have expected. And this is another thing that really separates, amateurs from professional musicians. And I was talking about lowest common denominator. So what's the thing that you can do under the worst circumstances where everything is working against you? You totally have to adjust your volume, your style, your technique. For me, I know that as a drummer, all I have to do is boom, crack, boom, crack. Is it flashy? No, but 90% of my work is that. If I can still do that, I'm good. I might not be able to do all the things in between, but it's really like, okay, what's the most basic thing I can do that doesn't mess it up? And it might not be exciting for me, but am I playing for me or am I playing for the audience? Am I trying to create music and be a professional at it, or am I trying to entertain myself? And both things are cool, right? Like anything, we all have different reasons for playing. As a professional, I think, okay, when I'm playing, there's a lot of times maybe my monitors don't work. Like the monitor guy is playing on his computer, or maybe my in-ear packed eyes in the middle of a song. What am I gonna do? Right? And once those situations happen, it's I immediately think, okay, I have to keep this ship afloat. Not what's my excuse for why is this working against me? How do I keep it moving? That's what I really focus on. And if you focus on being in the moment, what does this moment need? What's the the most basic thing that I can execute flawlessly. If there's something that I can maybe pull off like 50% of the time, I'm not going to do it in a situation like that. It's like assess your risks and just realize, all right, I would much rather play something really simply, having them want something more, than play something really complex and sound like absolute trash. So Ingold says, what's your go-to kick pedal? So I typically, actually I have one of the kick pedals I frequently use right here. Typically my gigging, Iron Cobra. It just fits in a case, nice and easy. I like that. I also have, usually carry a DW5000 as well. I also have a 9000 in my case. I'm not huge on kick, like I'm not like, okay, I need to have this kick pedal. Just as long as it secures to the, yeah. Because really all I'm doing is stomping and clapping. Yeah, and Joel says the tension between trying to increase the level of performance versus minimum performance without distracting mistakes. I mean, it's like, again, yeah, what are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to entertain? Are you trying to support a musician, another musician? What's your goal? And it's very different for every situation. Okay, so Dale says, would love videos, tips and trips on load-in and setup. I don't use backline kits unless summer festivals. Okay, so yeah, I'll make a video about that, Dale. I think I can do that. My number, like, get a rock and roller cart. That has saved my ass so many times. Really has saved my ass. But again, also set up, tear down. It's also very, like, very specific to who you are and what you're trying to achieve. I always like to take the smallest kit possible. Like, I have no problem playing with just a kick and snare, ride, and hi-hat. And I suggest everyone do that because it can be challenging, yeah, but man, it can also really force you to do some things, different things musically. But also, when I take less pieces, there's less variables for things going wrong, right? Less setup time, and I try to like make it as basic as possible. But again, like sometimes you need a little bit more gear for a gig. All right, so we got time for about one more question. So anyone's free to ask except Katie. But yeah, anything about music, anything about drums, gear, just the scene in Nashville. Oh, the guy who invented the rock and roller was your childhood friend. Wow, cool. That's very cool. So 95 at noon says, when it comes to the band leaders you most enjoy playing with, what is it about the people that makes it so great? So, man, that's a really good question. So there's a lot of different band leaders I work with, or artists or heads. And so I work with, the guy who I was live streaming with on Friday, Aaron Nichols, I work with him a lot. And I really like working with him because he's so talented and there's never any problems with him playing. And he just like, he gets it done. And he trusts me to get it done. He's a guy that says, all right, as long as you're not messing up, I'm cool. And he's a guy that just says, like, the song kind of goes like this. And yeah, he's almost kind of aloof, and some people like have a hard time with that. They're like, do you want me to play in this style, this style? And he's like, I don't know. Just play the tune, man. I'm here to sing. So, and he does it, and that's his get down. And I like that, and I like hang out with him as a person. And so like that's one band leader I really enjoy working with. But then there's other band leaders who'll be like, listen, I want you to like count off this tune this way and be very specific this way and do this. And I like working with them in that way because they are like very like, this is the way things roll. And everybody has kind of a different, I really like it when people trust me to be me and let me be me, but they're also clear about what they want and who they are. And it's also very much, we have to talk about band leaders as musicians and as people because sometimes they're always not aligned. You know, sometimes you work really well with a person on stage and then in the van it's just, and then sometimes some people are really great and you love them, but you're just like on stage, you're like, man, like, you're my friend, but you got to get it together. And so, yeah, what you said, like, Aaron, I don't know what it is about Aaron and me. Like, But like Aaron's playing and he'll do this to me. Like he'll literally do this. Like he'll just turn a certain way, not even the whole way. He'll just be like, and I'm like, all right, cool. And I can like listen to his phrasing, or I played with him enough where I know that yeah, I know what's coming. And thank you, Iron Man. I really appreciate that because I would rather be a tasty drummer. That'd be like, people would be like, oh, that's cool. Instead of anybody can do flashy. Well, I don't do flashy, but people remember things that make you feel. And I think tasty fills make you feel that way. But sorry to get sidetracked. But yeah, Aaron and I communicate very well. And I think it's really, when you're working with band leaders, some band leaders really want you to be like, they want you to have all your stuff ready and ask the questions. Some band leaders are like, yeah, don't do that. I also made a video about that actually with Cara Granger. And it was something, I think it was from maybe like September. And it's talking about what happens when the band leader doesn't like what you're playing. And Cara is very specific about what she wants to hear musically and stylistically. We were playing the song. I think I had the video entitled like, what happens? Have you ever been afraid to get fired and made a gig? So Cara and I were going to a gig in Cincinnati, and a few days prior to that, we were playing in Chicago. And then she was telling me, she's like, Aaron, you know what you were playing on Texas Blues last week? And I'm like, yeah. And I thought it was cool because I was like thinking like the simmery sidewinder kind of jazzy vibe. She was like, yeah, I didn't like that so much. Don't play that. And I was just like, oh. And it killed me. And I was like, what I was doing was really cool and tasteful. And she wanted it like straight ahead, like instead of. So I made a video about that and showcased like the two different feels. I want to see if I can find out the title of that video. And it was interesting because there was a lot of people, some people liked the way I was hearing it in my head in my version, and some people liked her version a little bit better. And people are like, oh, your version was way better. I'm like, well, no, that's not what it's about. It's about her. It's about what she wants. It's about her ideas, and it's her song. And I'm just going to try to, I think I got that video up. I might be able to put that in the chat here. But it's a really good video, and I'm going to encourage everyone to check it out because it's not so much just about like musical styles, but it's about learning how to interact with people, learning about what's, give me just 1 second here as I'm stumbling over my words, but really like, so some artists or some band leaders are going to say like, I want this very specific thing, and that is your absolute job to do. So the title of the video is what happens when the artist doesn't like your playing. I want to see if I can, I think I might be able to put that right here in the link in my channel. Let's see if we can do it. So I'm just here on my iPad. Let's see, paste this here. There. So if you want to check out that, so that's the link about like what happens. And so like when I'm playing with like Aaron Nichols, like he's not that specific about like the feels and the grooves. So yeah, he's do whatever you want. Cara, sometimes she's like, I want this, and neither's right or wrong. And I love both of them. Both of them are great musicians and dear friends. And they both have just different styles of leading a band. Okay, so your version went better when it was with the line. Okay. So, yeah, that's about all I have time for right now. I'm going to start working on some other things for the week. I try and do this same time every week, and I try to go as long as possible. And I try to answer as many questions as possible in the comments. Sometimes, with the amount of viewers I'm getting, both on my videos and in the live chat, sometimes I can't always get to them, and I'm trying to find a way to keep on doing that. But also, what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to create more content. I'm trying to create better content, upgrade the audio, upgrade the video, and maybe craft out a dedicated space where I can start doing like video shows, like actual long form interviews with some of these artists and musicians I'm working with, and to give people like a real inside look. Not like any of this bullshit that you see about like, creating this fake world about like music is so easy and glamorous. I really want to do things where I create like a real view of what it's like, how the sausage gets made. So I'm trying to create a space for that and trying to create some gear, trying to raise some funds for that as well. So couple ways you can help me. If you share this with share the channel with a friend. Any engagement is really helpful. It helps push this channel so we can start working towards getting like, advertising dollars. If you'd like to donate, that would always be great. I'm also accepting commissions as well, but I'm starting with some member benefits coming up here soon. But you can just donate in my PayPal option at the top of the channel, or just Venmo Aaron after. Yeah, but any help, any support, even just sharing with this friend, even just watching, even a thumbs up, that's great. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back here next week, same time. Sundays at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thanks for watching. I hope everyone has a good week.